Let's take a look at some different options for adding a controller into a module. Earlier in this module, we talked about how we can create an AngularJS module called Customers App, and we wired that into our ng app directive. You can see that here. But our controller is still kind of sitting out there in the open. It's in the global scope. And so if another script was loaded maybe after this one that also had a function with the name of Customers Controller, we'd run into a problem, obviously. So what we're going to do is refactor this controller. I'm going to show a few different options. All right, so let's go ahead and up here, I'll just add a comment. We'll call this option 1. And one option is we could come into here and make a global variable. I'm just going to call it app, and app is going to represent the Customers App module. Now we could go into here and we could refactor this, and we could say something like app.controller, give it a name. We'll call it Customers Controller. And then we could simply put this function right here, take off the name, or we could even leave it, but we'll take it off. And then we'll come down here and we'll end our controller parenthesis and our semicolon. So now the application has a controller inside of it called Customers Controller. So we've already referenced the app.js and the Customers Controller.js script. So we should be ready to go here. So let's go ahead and go to our index, and we've already referenced the controller as well here. It knows about the module, and so everything should load up. So let's go ahead and run it. And you can see everything works here. And we're off and running. Okay, so that's option 1. Now let's go back to our module. And now what I'm going to do is, let's say we don't want this global variable. Now you could certainly take this approach, and if you're not worried about team members also naming their variable the same, then we'd probably be okay in all reality. But nowadays we have so many third-party scripts we might use and a lot of other factors that you got to be careful. App would definitely not be a great name. You might want to be more specific, something a little more unique. But let's go ahead and just eliminate this altogether. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this definition in an anonymous function like this. So let's give that a little space here. Okay, now anything I do inside of here, even if I assigned a variable, let's go ahead and we'll put the app back, is no longer in the global scope. So we've pulled it out entirely. So now what I'm going to do is, we don't have a way to get to the app any longer, so we'll go to option 2. And the second option is, we don't have an app, but we do have the module. So let's go ahead and I'll just call this option 2, but we'll leave what we have. So let me comment out all of this and we'll cut and paste it down. Okay, so now let's do option 2 here. Okay, now we don't have access to app, but what we can do is say angular.module customers app, and that'll get us to the module. Now notice I'm not putting any dependencies. That would redefine the module. And then usually I'll bump this down like that, and we'll have .controller, and we'll give it the function. Now this will do the same type of thing, and in fact you could even come in, and I recommend this, and wrap this with anonymous function. And we could have done that with the first option as well, actually. Something like that right there. And now everything's pulled out of the global scope, and we're looking pretty good there. All right, so that's another option. And now we've added the same controller into the same module, and we should be good as long as I don't have any typos. So let's go ahead and go back, and we'll run it. And again, we should get the same type of output here. And you can see it still works. Okay, now let's go to option 3. So we'll come on back, and let's go ahead and we'll just comment this out, and I'll cut and paste it down. All right, and option 3 is along the lines of what we have here. In fact, we can just take this and we'll paste it down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reference the module this way, but instead of nesting the function like we did here, I want to not worry so much about plugging my code into Angular. I'm going to write my code first. Once I get that done, then I'll plug it into Angular. And this is what I prefer. So I'm going to create a customers controller and assign that to the function. And now we have a variable, which is basically an object or a function. And now down here, we can come down and say customers controller. And that'll take care of that for us automatically. Now, I prefer this approach because it allows me to focus just on getting my code right first instead of putting or nesting the function inside of the Angular code. Because I think that with bigger functions can get a little bit messy. Now, either of these approaches work. This one, or really I should say all three of these approaches work. And there's even other ways you could do this. But I like this approach.